Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Welcome, everyone, to Procurement Foundry's first virtual conference. We're so excited that y'all are here. It seems like the show couldn't have come at a better time. Like Mike said, I'm Katie McEwen, the procurement girl. I make buying at work easy with BuyerQuest, and I'm so excited to be here with all these panelists. Over here in our little corner, we'll be discussing how these leaders are managing through the trenches through these crazy times. So sit down, fall down, or lie down. We've got a lot to discuss and unpack today, so get comfortable. Thank you so much for joining the panel, Brian and Alex. I'm excited to hear what it's been like working from home. I know for me, my daughter has this astute ability to know when I'm on an important call, and she screams at the top of her lungs, and I can't hit the mute button fast enough. I'm curious to hear about your all's roles and what you guys have been up to over the last month.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So I'll start off. So this is Brian McHale, and like Katie, I'm in a similar boat where my work-life balance is. I've been lucky enough to be working from home for quite a while, and it's just now more of an extended stay. It's probably been about 2 months. Before this call, I walked downstairs, and my son took a look at me and said, "What's that? What are you wearing, Dad?" I mean, he doesn't recognize me without a hoodie and sweatpants. So, they think I'm like a stranger right now with this. But, from a work-life balance standpoint, I'll touch on that really quick. I'm up here locked in the office, working days in, days out, and like Mike had said when he opened it, I mean, I'm on the Slack Procurement Foundry, just finding my next source and lead, and bringing that back to my team, and then bringing that back to the Procurement Foundry of how we can help. And downstairs, my wife is holding it down with three boys, 7 and under, handling virtual school, and they wanted to be in here, but I felt after the couple meetings that I took a look at earlier, I felt maybe we can pass on that maybe next time. But I got my buddy over here. That's my audience. He'll be flying with me through this. But a little bit about me. I've been in supply chain and procurement for about 14 years. Half of that was in supply chain with direct materials. Half of that's been in procurement, commodity managing, strategic sourcing. Right now I'm with JLL as a sourcing leader on a life sciences account where we are providing integrated facilities management. And what that is that, what JLL is that they're 75% commercial real estate firm, and then the other 25% is this integrated corporate solutions where we can take care of your building, we can sell it for you, but then we can also manage it, where we bring in our own laborers, we bring in our own team, and you can outsource that complete facility side. So I'm on that outsourced facility side where I'm a consultant to a life sciences company where we're dealing with janitorial, landscaping, food services, HVAC. So my, that's a little bit about my background, but, last month, COVID, this has been crazy. I mean, it's been the initial shock. What is happening? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my life? What does this mean for my professional life? What's happening and where do I go next? Where can I help? And I want to say there was like a little bit of a lull where like a week went by where I didn't know where to turn, but next thing you know, you start hearing things on Procurement Foundry, and then you start getting pulled into emergency teams, and then you just hit the ground running, and you just find out, what's the next item that you need, where can I get it, who's got the reliable source, how quickly can we get it, are they vetted, how do we pay for it, how much do we need, and everything. And then where I'm at now, over that past month or 2 months, I'm about to the point where how do I balance my normal operations with my COVID operations. So, we're still working hard. It's not more than we were before, and we're just keeping things going. So, I'll kick it over to Alex. What's your thoughts? How you working? We're back and forth all the time, so I know a little bit about you, but let everybody else in.
Sounds good. I think let me make sure everyone can hear me okay. If you give me a thumbs up. All right, perfect. Yeah, I'm still nervous with the Zoom setup. So I'm Alex Singer, broadcasting live from my bedroom, home office here. I asked my wife to leave our shared desk for the hour. So work home balance is all one and the same at this point. So I lead the indirect team at Peloton. I think this is one of the few times that people are more interested in hearing about warehouse supplies like toilet paper and sanitizer versus the hardware products. So we'll talk about all of the MRO world today. I think this morning Mark made a good point that a lot of online collaboration kind of happens one-on-one. And I'd say definitely over the past month have collaborated a lot with Brian's team, but actually view him as an extension of our team. So we'll talk about some of that collaboration today and try to focus on some actions or recommendations that we're seeing, either by experience or other peers in the Slack channel and what we can, share with the team. So there is a Q&A at the bottom if you want to put any questions in there. We've taken some ahead. But we'll try and keep an eye on the Q&A and answer anything that we don't get to. A little bit about my role. So I lead the indirect team. So for our company, what I like is the variety. We have a network of warehouses. We have a network of retail stores, production studios, as well as offices. So it's made the past month interesting as I support 5 countries and 7 time zones. So as Mike said, my day starts with Germany, ends with Taiwan. So pretty much have not slept more than 6 hours, I think, on a normal week anyways, or a normal day. Also in the spare time, I also lead Procurement Foundry in New York. So I see a lot of familiar faces in there. And I think that has really helped us, both Brian and I, work through the situation better, kind of vet new suppliers quickly. And so we'll talk about some of that today that we're seeing.
That's awesome. Well, y'all certainly have a lot of work cut out for you, managing shortages and new suppliers and leading teams. Have you had to change the way that your team operates to support the organization?
So in my role, we have, because we primarily we're sourcing for services. So, some of the services aren't taking place right now. We're pushing off preventative maintenance. We're pushing off, just people coming to the sites in general because we are at a remote work from home if you can. A lot of our staff is essential employees. A lot of our laborers to keep the lights on, keep the UPS generators, just everything flowing. But we've had to change, at least my team, from an indirect procurement to that, plus a mix of supply chain and even international supply chain. My background is there in supply chain, but I was lucky enough to have a team member on my staff that she has connections in China and has the international aspects where that gave us kind of a leg up on some of the vendors over there that she's been helping us vet and be able to make sure that we're comfortable when making these large purchases, because you go from not buying PPE, or at least on this scale, to going to say to our client or our managers saying, we're about to purchase $500,000 worth of masks from China, but there could be a quality issue that we need to get this through and everything. But we've definitely changed the organization that route. The other aspects that we've changed or that we're migrating to is working more of a greater good mentality. So we have sites across the U.S., New Jersey, California, Syracuse, and then down into Puerto Rico. And when we're finding these different pockets of supply, what we're finding is that we have to act quick. We have to make purchases. We have to get them the logistics done right away. So, instead of sending something from California over to New Jersey, we're just drop shipping it to a California site, getting it in our network, and then shipping it out from there. And that's kind of been a little bit difficult if you did that 6 months ago, but now everybody's on the same team and platform that we're able to do that because they understand the greater good that we have to make these changes, and there's budget lines set up for these specific purchases. And then 2 other things are the fact that we're working with health and safety for a group that we've always had a relationship with, but never worked on this level, where every mom and pop is coming up with sanitizer, and you got to get them the SDS sheet, because if you don't get that product approved and you go out and put your procurement name out there that you're going to make this order, and it comes in, and your health and safety team says that, this isn't going to fight coronavirus, this isn't going to keep our people protected. Well, you're out a lot of money there, and you're back to square one. So that's a new way that we've been operating. And then the other thing is just keeping morale up in our organization, because Alex probably knows we probably get 10 leads a day or 5 leads a day, and we maybe act on 1 of them a week or 2 of them a week, and it's just kind of you get frustrated, but once you get stuff and supply in the network, that's what it's all about.
To follow on to Brian, so I think kind of going to the question of how we've had to sort of shift our model. I'd say 3-4 months ago, we were or still are a technology-enabled sourcing team. With a lot of self-serve buying for all of our different locations. We've kind of completely flipped that in the past few months, and I think something I saw in another webinar in the last couple of weeks resonated and ties into that. It was the CTO of New York City under Bloomberg, and he was talking about supplies that aren't mobilized really aren't doing any good. And our number one priority for my team is making sure that our teams are able to operate safely. So we have stepped into probably a much more tactical role over the last month, and I think I'll kind of walk through a couple of reasons why, and I think a lot of sourcing teams are going to find themselves in that position as they start to prepare to reopen either offices or stores in the next couple of weeks or a couple months. So I think maybe touching on tactical execution first, and Brian mentioned that speed and execution is a critical advantage right now. One of the things that we realized very, very early on and made a decision to jump in, every supplier has a different order model and how they fulfill their orders. 3 months ago, you'd place a PO, that'll show up in 2-3 days. You didn't really have to think about how that order was getting processed behind the scenes. One of the recommendations I would have is if you haven't already, you really need to understand this for each of your suppliers because it varies so greatly. Just to use an example in the MRO world, I know, Uline, they either have it or they don't. They process the order or they reject it. Staples or an MSC, they may let you sit in line and then go down an allocation order. So you've got to sort of play the game and figure out, which supplies you're going to get where at each different time. And we realized very early on, for my team of folks with a sourcing background, that's easy to comprehend and action on, rather than different warehouse managers trying to keep up with what's really a fluid situation. And, we were finding that it just wasn't going to work long term. So we made the decision, all right, let's step in, let them focus on other stuff, and we'll basically operate a buy desk in the meantime for some of the critical supplies. So I think, that would be one of my recommendations over the next month, if you haven't already done that, is call your account reps, really understand, how do they allocate orders out if they prioritize, and then what you can do to kind of move up in your tier. Another thing I think that has really changed for us is becoming much more distribution or operations focused. Again, thinking about how to actually mobilize the supplies, how they move through the supply chain and actually get used, by your employees. And I think one of the things that for my team that I have them do is they work a shift at a warehouse or a retail store as part of one of their first weeks. So I think having that firsthand understanding of, how are gloves actually being used, how are they received into a warehouse, put on a rack, and then shipped back out, that's helped us pivot pretty quickly. And I think, for folks that support other teams that may not have those relationships built already, I'd actually see if you could get somebody, maybe sitting idle from a retail, sort of basically temporarily join your team or kind of advise on that stuff. I think that's having that understanding and having those relationships has been pretty critical. So we've taken on a bit more of a distribution role as well. I've probably prepped a few hundred FedEx labels in the past few weeks. Even worked in a warehouse last week myself. And then finally, I'd say also, how we've changed as well is, again, speed is so critical right now to getting very scarce supplies that everybody is looking, for very short shopping lists. So anything you can do to kind of put yourself ahead of them. So one of those two is probably working more and more closely with our vendor management teams, getting folks through the appropriate checks. We still need to do our due diligence, run them through, OFAC and AML checks. How can we do that up front? Can we gather things for them instead of waiting until a selection? So really trying to, before where we may have kind of crafted deals or set strategy, really at this point, getting through everything from source identification all the way to, how we're actually consuming things on the ground. So, I'd say we've shifted pretty dramatically. It's been interesting, and I think, I've always approached procurement and sourcing with an operations mind. So I think, this is kind of that black swan event where we're really starting to operationalize a lot of the things that we always kind of had in the back of our mind.
With everyone's role expanding and growing, it's got to be pushing a lot of people out of their comfort zone for sure. Hopefully you've come across some unexpected resources and maybe some interesting supplier conversations. I know probably we never thought that hand sanitizer would be such a hot commodity in 2020. So how are you managing those supplier conversations, and what kind of resources are you learning?
Yeah, I can take this one first. I think one of the unexpected ones, and I definitely recommend folks to kind of dig into these, has been small businesses. I really even want to say like micro businesses. Everybody is going to Grainger, Staples, you name it, as your usual suppliers, and your Gojos and Purells. We kind of quickly made a decision that we got to look at some other options that we normally don't look at. So I think just kind of brute force Googling, found a couple small business suppliers. One is a company of 4 people that normally makes bug repellent. We found got a FDA approval to make sanitizers. We also knew that being based in New York, it was a very crowded market. So geography of where they were producing this really didn't affect us. So, actually this is in rural upstate New York. And so these small businesses have really kind of helped us secure supply that we may be competing for elsewhere. And kind of a nice, side benefit of it is this guy's been able to hire some part-time workers that had been laid off from their normal jobs. So, as a person that may be an ongoing supplier for us. We've also been working with a couple distilleries who were able to flip over, and a brewery in Canada, on the hand sanitizer front, have been given the right government certification. The other thing that's been really interesting too is taking a look at almost not quite complementary, but an inverse business. So there's a lot of industries that we found are going to be shut down. So we started looking at their supply chain and saying, can we tap into that? So we were starting to kind of bang our heads that we weren't able to get disinfectants or cleaning supplies through our normal channels, even where we're a preferred buyer, but are actually buying it now from someone who supplies beauty salons who've been closed for, close to 2 months now. So we were able to kind of get in there first. So to kind of make both of those a recommendation, I'd say really, definitely look to the community around you, folks that you normally wouldn't consider, whether that's sanitizers. There's a ton of folks basically making masks that can scale up production and get out a lot quicker than you could probably even get some of the cloth ones from Amazon. And then also, who's really outside of your industry. Try and think, what am I trying to get? And, where may there not be the same kind of competition? Because I think we're all kind of, gang tackling the big suppliers and overwhelming them. And, our fear is as other stores start to open up, all the different states opening up, that competition is just going to get more and more fierce, I think, over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
I guess, Brian, curious what you've seen as well.
No, I mean, I second all that. Your go-to people that you had in the beginning, they're struggling, or they have so many customers that they just can't keep up. So, I think some of the supplier conversations or unexpected, resources that I've found, both from Procurement Foundry and outside of it within my internal and external network, the ones that jumped out at me at the start was the promotional suppliers. So we have a security guard badging supplier, which you think, what are they going to, what connections do they have? We don't need supplies from them right now. But it turns out that for the trade shows that they do, and they give out the little bottles of sanitizer and the little personal wipe packs and everything, we hit it with them, and we were able to get an order pretty quickly, and we got in with them pretty early. Now they're scaling up, they're getting bigger supplies, dipping into other things. It's just that who has the logistics already set up that you can piggyback off them, because you don't want to set up the whole, if you don't have to, you don't want to set up your own sourcing that you're going internationally. You want to try and keep it within the, within domestically with somebody that that they can handle the other aspects of it. We went to distilleries. We definitely went to them. That's been working out pretty well. And then just another one that came out from the Procurement Foundry. And I use the Foundry just to stay up on what's the next hot item and what we're going after. But we had a food manufacturer, and I saw the name on here recently. Simple again. I mean, if you're going to order from them, go to them. I worked with Dan Young to source some of their Tier 2 products so that they can get their manufacturing up and ready. I used to work in a pump industry, and he needed some pumps and different things to get his production line up and ready, because me and Alex were talking to him early on, and I think he wasn't going to be up and ready until late April. Well, we're late April, and he got up and ready, I think, middle of April or early April, and we've ordered from them, and we have our janitorial company ordering from them, and that's the other aspects of this that we're doing is we're not just going Tier 1, we're going Tier 2. We're going to the next steps, because you just don't know who has the connections, who has the power to just speed things up, and it only takes a phone call, it only takes an email, and it just just spirals from there. You got to keep organized though, because with all these things coming in, you don't know where to turn, and you don't know who gave you what lead time, and who. That's some of the things that I've been working through with the unexpected resources, but it's been fun. And I mean, it's been fun in a crisis situation, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, there's probably never been a better time to tap into your professional network and ask for help. I'm sure it's playing a huge role. I mean, utilizing that network seems like it's the best way and most critical way to really bounce back and rebound. So, I mean, knowing that this will pass and everything we're learning right now is just going to help us to be stronger and more resilient leaders in the future. But it does bring up, into question, how are we going to overcome this and get on the other side of this crisis? Do y'all have any advice for the audience?
Yeah, I think the next steps that we're going to see, I think maybe Alex touched on early on, is who's gonna hold this PPE like in the long range, in a year from now, 2 years from now, because you can't get away from it and stock it all at your place all the time. So for people that don't use it on a day-to-day basis, so I can see the industry from a supply chain standpoint start going to some of more vendor managed or a 3PL that's gonna you pay retainer fee for them to hold the business continuity near your sites, and then you kind of do a joint local purchase among companies in that area, and you're just kind of building this warehouse so that we don't get in the same situation. And who knows what that demand's going to be, but I see that happening. I see domestic suppliers coming forth. And then after this, I mean, there's going to be an emphasis on cleaning. I mean, we're already talking about return to work or the new acronym RTW. We're talking about that and where we're going to be. And what's cleaning going to be like after that? Is it going to be enough to just have them clean at night? Do you need to have them clean it daily? Do they need to They're going to be scrutinized every which way. Food services too, what type of precautions they're taking. But I think the big thing is how do we, and Alex touched on this earlier, how do we prepare for the future? I mean, we can have those supplies locally, and we can take precautions in the office, but we need that business continuity planning. We need those sub-teams set up that can mobilize in a quick effort, and then a RACES type matrix of the rules and responsibilities and who holds the decision making, who gathers it, what different work streams need to be in tuned and aligned and approved, and I think that's where some of the things. I mean, we could go on for another hour just going down the rabbit hole of what's going to change, but I think the last session hit on it with elevators and just open office space. I mean, there's a lot that's going to happen, but what's your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I think one of the actions that I would recommend is if you're responsible in any way for facilities sourcing or workplace sourcing or even IT sourcing, and especially if you have retail stores or office space, you need to kind of start preparing for those reopenings yesterday. And I think one of the recommendations I would have is almost force the conversation. What I think is everybody has been so used to just-in-time delivery, whether it's either at work or at home. I mean, to the point where you even got like the Amazon Dash button where you could always press a button and stuff would show up in 2 days. So a lot of people don't necessarily understand kind of the perfect storm that's happened until you can walk them through a couple examples. So I think, my fear and what I've seen a couple people kind of behind the ball on the Slack community is starting to look for things, 2-3 days before folks are going to be in that store. So I think, really as procurement leaders, we need to kind of bang on the door, force that conversation if nobody's come to us. Because I think now, previously somebody may have developed an SOP and we would have found a way to, fit supplies into it. I think in a lot of cases, supply availability is going to drive certain SOPs. So that would be my recommendation, is that, figure out a way to get people to really understand that and then start preparing against it. So, can your team actually accelerate that reopening schedule, or will supplies become a bottleneck? So I think that's on us, as procurement leaders to really drive those conversations. One of the things we did that was helpful was kind of just walked our HR team through, what we were seeing, like 3 key items, like, what's been happening with sanitizers, gloves, and cleaning supplies. And then, the light bulb went off in people's heads. And, we are a critical part of designing, what does that return to work or return to a store look like? And I think it's, now it's probably more important than ever for an indirect team to play in that.
That's great advice, guys. I mean, if you're not preparing for the world to reopen, you're already behind. I love that. That's such great advice. I mean, none of us could have prepared for this crisis, but did any experience or past roles help you to prepare for this in any way?
I mean, I've already touched on it, the supply chain, so I won't go much further into that. But my biggest thing was Hurricane Maria. I mean, that hit me hard. We have sites down there, but it's just so different. It's completely different than here. It definitely got me prepared for it because I guess when this all came about, I knew I was going to get calls on the weekend. I knew I was going to get calls at night. The lines of when you're working and not working is just going to be blurred. And you're just going to have to, keep close tabs and move quickly and know the people that you can trust and the people that you can rely on to get action. And that's kind of where it came in for me. And I mean, Hurricane Maria, it came, it went, and you dealt with the damage. Here, it's across the board. Every site's dealing with it, maybe to a different degree. But it's been some crazy times. But that's prepped me for the most part.
Yeah, I'd say my team is young, and so had not gone through things like SARS or Hurricane Sandy before, and I think started to see the rationale of why we had pushed certain things during the year, like kind of understanding, all the upstream components of our indirect supply chain, and really why we pushed so hard that, hey, it was so critical, to really understand all altitudes of kind of the P2P life cycle. So, I don't know if there's one specific experience I can kind of point to, but I think really when it hits the fan, you really need people that can execute and really kind of get supplies to that final mile. And so that's really what, we've been pushing over the last month. I'd say, kind of similar going through Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, but like Brian said, those were localized, regionalized, whereas what's been interesting about this is just the breadth of it. I don't think there's anyone that really truly, appreciated that going in. So that's been,
for sure.
I'd say impactful or interesting.
We've been forced to face our weaknesses and vulnerabilities within organizations like never before. Do you feel like it's showcasing a greater need for digital technology and data to be exposed throughout the process?
Yeah, I can take that one, Brian. I think a couple things we both shared, kind of discussing this earlier. Data, centralized data has really actually helped both of us react a little bit better or stay ahead of kind of what's coming. So, speed of consumption has changed on PPE items. How fast are people going through gloves? When are we going to run out? That's been really critical from like a data side to us in making sure that we don't have that stock out. I think another critical thing for us, someone was mentioning spot buying in the Q&A. We've actually relied heavily on our P2P system. So, while some folks may be, calling their sales rep or trying to place bulk orders, we can push out 50 POs with a few clicks. I think we've actually really leverage that. I think that also goes back to understanding kind of how your orders are processed behind the scenes and leveraging that. So, I definitely say having centralized data to make that decision, and it can be low tech. I think we spoke with someone on the Slack channel, I forget which company she was with, but, a simple Google sheet, red, yellow, green inventory of some supplies of these sites helps you stay ahead. And that can mean advantage if you can stay a week ahead. That's pretty critical right now.
Yeah, so that's the red, yellow, green. I mean, that's what we're using as far as who's good, who's bad, who's in the middle, who's coming up for a need. And I can't say one technology that's paved the way for us. We don't move as quick as your company, Alex, but we're more steering a large warship, I'd say. Plus, we have to get the client to help us out as far as who makes the decision, what paper it's going on, who's making the POs and everything. But some of the lines have blurred there too. That we're working together. That all right, they can do it on a credit card that they have a larger purchase limit on. But I might have connections with my AP that I can get a supplier in quicker. So it's that push and pull type of thing that we're working together on. But the one item for data that's helped us, and it goes back to the consumption. And I don't think anybody has the right or wrong answer of how much you need. But badge swipes, how many employees do you have? How many visitors do you have coming in on a daily basis? How many contractors do you have? And then extrapolating that is, all right, what's the daily demand, what's the weekly demand, what's the monthly demand, and then just adding another multiplier on top of that so that you're conservative, because you don't want to be the one that orders not enough. And if you order too much, it's going to be consumed, or you can repurpose it, you can pay for it, you can donate it, or you can sell it. So, that's some of the things that data has been helping us out. But I don't know, Katie, we have any we got about 10 minutes or so. What's next up here?
Yeah, so I just had one more question, and then we're going to open it up to one question from the Q&A. But, you know, supply chain procurement has been pushed to the forefront so much, especially with everything that's going on, bringing process and procurement to the center stage. Do you all feel like your role's been viewed differently since all of this has happened?
I think that's a unanimous, probably yes. I would say so.
Well, there's a silver lining.
Yeah, it's you know, is that how it's going to be 6 months from now, a year from now? I don't know the answer to that, but I definitely think we'll be recognized for the work that that's being done and the value. You know, I was thinking about this before the call and before the conferences. You know, your finance team only does this part of work. Your AP team only does this. Your operations, they're making things. They're getting things done within your four walls. But you know, procurement's inside and outside the walls, and your supply chain's inside and outside, and that's not going to change. You know, I think we're just going to get more visibility, and it's good for us. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think folks are kind of starting to realize, and you've got to kind of evangelize it to at this point of why have we always pushed certain things like spend consolidation, right-sizing our account teams, why I want to buy MRO from someone with an account team and not Amazon. You know, I think you've got to kind of gently sort of tell that story and weave it in that, yeah, now that I have an account team who can advocate for me, push me to the front of the line ahead of Brian, you know, get me those supplies or someone, you know, versus kind of just going in a first in, first out. So I think, you know, folks are starting to really appreciate that, you know, now that they're actually seeing in a critical situation like this, that, hey, okay, it makes sense why you guys push this for the last, you know, 12 months. So, you know, I think that's, you know, starting to materialize. It's certainly not the circumstances you'd want to, you know, sort of show that point, but it is why we do a lot of those things and set up these strategic relationships. And yeah, I think we're really critical to continuing safe operations, and I you know, think this is a time to not be shy, to kind of push yourself into some of those you know, conversations. I think you've got to kind of get over that nervousness, but once you're in the door, I think you know, if you can kind of bring that value to the table, you know, as teams are building these SOPs, as they're preparing to reopen, it can be a strategic advantage. So yeah, I think this is actually, I do expect that a lot of teams will view your indirect procurement teams differently following this experience.
Yes, I want to jump in on that because, you know, Alex just said don't be shy, and I'd say that that's a big part of it, because these vendors that you're bumbling before you go to talk to them, or you don't know which way left or right is because you're just getting thrown with so much. They probably heard it 10, 15 times that day already, and they just want to know, you know, what do you need? How can I get it? Here's your lead time. Here's your quotation. And then on the connection part of it, you know, don't be shy, because, especially in this Procurement Foundry, because me and Alex, you know, before this, we didn't know each other. We just been, you know, talking on Slack and talking in the different groups, and you know, we made a connection. It's kind of a challenge to both of us to who knows the where the supply is coming from, or the next hot product that's needed. So we keep challenging ourselves, and you know, my wife knows him as the Peloton guy, so yeah, it's we're talking a lot back and forth.
We share the same quarantine barber, so.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, y'all, let's take a question from the audience. So it was mentioned that it's a good time to partner with VMO. Can you expand on that, guys?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think, swing at that one first. Yeah, I think one of the important things to realize in this is we still have a fiduciary responsibility to our companies. And the other thing too, you know, probably everyone is seeing all the sharks circling, that there's a lot of bad actors out there. And I think doing your due diligence is probably more important now than ever, because I think there is a push to have speed, but you got to balance that with managing risk and mitigating risk for the company. So, so some of the things that we've kind of done, normally we might not put somebody through the full vendor onboarding until the deal's done, secured. We started to bring that forward, that, assuming this deal works out, we do our due diligence, somebody does a factory visit, we're able to react and issue a PO right there on the spot versus, maybe taking another 3-4 days to do that. So I'd say, definitely now's the time to collaborate a little bit more. If you have a standalone vendor management team or vendor onboarding team, as well as if, a lot of things are cash up front now. So you really got to collaborate with your AP team on basically making sure that you've done all your due diligence, you've mitigated the risk, and that you're actually able to transact that quickly on the back end. Because what you're seeing, I'm sure, is within a matter of hours, some of these markets can change, especially if you're trying to work overseas.
Yeah,
I don't have any. Alex hit it. I got nothing else.
All right, you got nothing, huh? Well, that was awesome. Thanks so much for everyone that joined this panel. Thank you so much for our genius panelists here. We so appreciate you sharing your advice with us. Mike is going to hop on here and give us some instructions on how to move forward through this conference. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking us out.